forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack make it backflip. Telly Hank it with the action. With the Vato speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews, how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby May. Just caught a touchdown from the Bay.
Was there any talk on the street that, you know, something was coming this way? Were there any, like, warnings that you ever saw that he might have been, it was time for him to get out of the game?
Yeah, well, actually, I ain't never heard any talk or anything like that, but the day he got killed, he came around, you know, he could, you know, do his usual, pull up over here, and I noticed that somebody broke his window, which was crazy. Like, yo, nigga, somebody broke 50 Cent window? Like, that's crazy. So that was like basically a warning right there, you know what I'm saying?
The last thing I remember saying to 50 was, down here in Albany Projects, more than likely you'll be safer here than anywhere else, because no strangers will come down here to try to do anything to you.
Wait, hold on. Nobody just walks up in Albany.
Whoever would do anything to him would have to be somebody he know in order to come in the projects, to hang around the projects, to do anything to somebody in the projects during that time.
Not only that, wouldn't you? Would anybody have to be for a brother like that? Be close to him to get up to him?
Yes, it would have to be a friend of his to even come in there unannounced or announced or anything, so.
Especially if you on the run. If you hiding out, you're not just gonna let anybody next to you. You ain't gonna let nobody near you unless you know him.
You're right.
Unless you really know that nigga. As you would expect, there were plenty of giants who had a motive for having 50 Cent wasted, and plenty of wannabe giants itching to rub him out.
Forgive me for asking this, but back in those days, who had access to an army?
I don't know.
Who would have the balls to do something like that?
I don't know.
Against a giant?
I don't know, honestly.
I know for me, coming from that neighborhood and, you know, being a male, it would have to be another giant or someone who wants to be.
Either way, by this time, 50 Cent had made so many enemies that who did it wasn't important. The entire neighborhood knew why he was killed, for being the grimy dude that he was. Ultimately, the man who pulled the trigger was neither giant nor wannabe giant. Kelvin Darnell Martin, aka 50 Cent, was shot and killed by Julio Acevedo, aka Wemo. Wemo was forced to do it after anonymous culprits kidnapped a member of Acevedo's family, threatening to kill them unless and until Wemo, one of the few who knew where 50 Cent was hiding, would go and kill him once and for all. Kelvin was shot on Friday, October 20th, 1987, around 10 p.m. after leaving Precious at her 13th floor apartment in the Albany Projects.
I swear, some of the shit from the 80s sound like a fucking movie. Yo, it's your ace Popalot. Salute the almighty mob. We on our way to Brooklyn with it. The Bushwick section. My guys from Bushwick, y'all get in the comment box. Definitely one of the underrepresented sections of Brooklyn. And we always talk about Bed-Stuy, Flatbush, East New York, Brownsville. Yeah, I don't sleep on them niggas from Bushwick. Now, today we are going to be talking about a name from what I would like to call the terror era, anywhere between 1985 to 1991, 1992, that is rarely mentioned and is probably one of the most feared, and to some, probably the most feared guys that came out of that era. And that person that I'm talking about is going to be a guy by the name of Richard Bush. Now, Richard Bush, like a lot of people I have covered in the past, is what I would consider a ghost online, really, where you can't find many mentions of them, you can't find many articles on them. And for him specifically, it could be for a multitude of reasons. But based on the limited information that I did find on him, would paint a picture of one of the most notorious killers in the game, being said to have confessed to upwards of 24 murders. I couldn't really find a lot of information about the victims, but the information I did find on the murders that he was involved in just shows how much of a scary figure that Richard Bush actually was. His name will come up in the case of a famous exoneree, a guy by the name of Derek Hamilton. Now, some people might be familiar to Derek Hamilton for receiving a $7 million settlement in New York in the year of 2019 for being falsely imprisoned for 23 years. I also want to say I heard him referenced by the name of Bush on the Brian Glaze Gibbs video a while back. Derek Hamilton would eventually receive a life sentence for the January 4th, 1991 killing of a guy by the name of Nathaniel Cash at 1215 Monroe Street in Brooklyn. His murder was allegedly witnessed by his girlfriend, a female by the name of Jules Smith. The background of the case against Derek Hamilton would say that Jules Smith was very acquainted with Derek Hamilton from the neighborhood. Based on that information, the police would charge Derek Hamilton with second-degree murder, along with several weapons charges. On June 17, 1992, a grand jury would find Derek Hamilton guilty of the second-degree murder charge, as well as the second-degree criminal possession of a weapon charge. He would be convicted and sentenced to life, and that would start his path as the famed jailhouse lawyer. Almost 10 years after his conviction, Richard Bush's name would come up when Derek Hamilton would file a motion on June the 2nd of 2000, when he would claim that the government would violate his Rosario rights, with the claim that they failed to disclose information that was relevant to his murder case. That information being a handwritten note from a detective Ponzi by Richard Bush implicating someone other than Derek Hamilton in his murder case. Not sure if that was Richard Bush doing his due diligence with the 24 murders that he was charged with, but it will be that, and I'm sure a lot of hard hours in the law library that would lead to the exoneration of Derek Hamilton. In 1990, Richard Bush would testify in an unrelated case of a plot that he and several people had organized to kidnap a guy by the name of Julio Acevedo and have him kill Kelvin 50 Cent Martin. Now, Acevedo would tell the police on October the 20th, 1987, that he and a friend would be abducted at gunpoint, tied up, and threatened with death if they did not take the gunman to where they knew Kelvin 50 Cent Martin was hiding and kill him. According to the New York Times, a spokesperson for the district attorney's office at the time, a guy by the name of Jerry Shatmurder, would go on to say that Richard Bush's confession at the time was vague and inconsistent. And it would be several years after the murder of Kelvin 50 Cent Martin, in 1995, when Julio Acevedo, who was serving time in Attica prison, when they say that he would encounter an inmate that was well-versed in criminal procedure, that inmate being Derek Hamilton. The two would go on to write a motion to Brooklyn Supreme Court Justice Ann Feldman, who had originally presided over Juan Acevedo's trial, asking her to reverse the conviction based on that information. Feldman would go on to reverse the conviction and order Juan Acevedo released immediately. He would at that time have served 8 years of a 20-year sentence. But as some may know, second chances are not good for everybody. And around 2012, 2013 or so, Juan Acevedo would be involved in a fatal car accident involving a Jewish couple, pretty much wiping out any second chance aspirations that he might have had. Richard Bush would end up serving 25 years, which is actually crazy when they say he confessed to upwards of 24 murders and said to be walking around the streets today. And though, like I said earlier, besides Kelvin 50 Cent Martin, you can't find much information on the victims that they say he's responsible for killing. But when two people are exonerated for murders, based on information that you provided to the government, it definitely makes me think how many other people are locked up for murders he probably did or was involved with. Y'all make sure y'all hit that red bell and subscribe button right under this video so y'all know when this real Trill Spill shit is dropping. Now, I need anybody that was around in the 80s to get in the comment box. Why don't we hear about Richard Bush? Based on his own admission, he's probably the most deadliest person to come out of the city during the terror era, up with guys like Preacher and Alpo. Y'all definitely get down there. Let me know what cities we need to go to, what stories we need to tell, what we got wrong, what we missed, all of that. Y'all hit me directly, Instagram, Twitter, POP_A_LOT. Until the next time, we gonna be back. Y'all know the rules. Shades Popalot. Salute the almighty mob.